The only survivor of the Cheshire home invasion wants to keep autopsies of murdered children.
From a happy family to a horrific home invasion that killed the whole family, this is one of the worst crimes ever. On the other hand, what started as a random encounter turned into a terrifying story of theft, sexual assault, and massacre that stunned a peaceful suburb. What happened to Petit's family? How was their home invaded? Who was behind this call of evil? Well, stick around till the end as we unfold this pathetic case of the Petit family. This is Unsolved Files, a place where true crime stories are being brought to your doorstep. What are you waiting for? Just hit the subscribe button for more intriguing and suspense-filled crime stories. Now, let's get back into this story and uncover this mystery. In the year 2007, the Petit family resided in Cheshire, Connecticut. This was a community of tight-knit families living in farming areas and suburbs. This neighborhood was full of caring families who knew one another and looked out for one another. It wasn't exactly a small town, but everyone there liked each other. However, the Petit family consisted of William, Bill, and Jennifer, who had two children, Michaela and Haley, ages 11 and 17, respectively. When Bill and Jennifer first started dating 22 years ago, Jennifer was a nurse and he was a medical student at the same hospital. However, when they talk about how they got together, it was an extremely amusing story since Bill thought Jennifer was a young, attractive girl and wanted to teach her how to take her blood pressure. He had only been doing this for about 3 minutes, whereas Jennifer had been doing it for a very long time. As a result, he messed it up right away, and Jennifer had to take over and do it for him. However, she didn't seem to mind because she was very patient with him and simply taught him. That's how they met, and they were married that same year. Bill was a devoted, hard worker, and Jennifer was a bright young woman, kind, patient, and someone everyone gravitated towards. And as of 2017, this family seemed to be pleased and joyful. At that time, 50-year-old Bill was a doctor, while 48-year-old Jennifer co-directed a health facility at a nearby boarding school. Now that he had earned his degree, he was working at Connecticut Central Hospital as an endocrinologist. Haley, their oldest child, was a driven youngster who had excelled academically her entire life, earning consecutive A's. She led an athletic association and played cross-country basketball, but her real goal was to attend Dartmouth College, where Bill had gone to study medicine like her parents. She was extremely passionate about this cause because her mother, Jennifer, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when she was just 9 years old. She also started a fundraiser called Haley's Hope, which helped people with the disease and funded research into it. She kept none of the money raised. But when she was just 9 years old, she began taking matters into her own hands because she genuinely wanted her mother to live. She was requesting funding for her research project through letters to friends and family, and at this point, she had earned almost $55,000, which helped her win the school's Extraordinary Community Service Award. Haley didn't boast about anything, though, and none of her friends were aware of it. She didn't tell anyone because her main goal was to help others, so as not to gain attention. In addition, Michaela, her younger sister, was regarded as kind, considerate, and caring. She was a little more reserved, especially with grown-ups, but she was always willing to lend a helping hand, no matter what the situation called for. Also, she enjoyed watching cooking programs, and she frequently prepared meals for her whole family. It was simply something she felt passionate about, and that came naturally to her. Michaela nicknamed it Michaela's Miracle because she wanted to carry on Haley's hope when she left for college, but was unable to do so. The whole family wanted to ensure that everyone in their immediate vicinity was content and healthy, and they were prepared to go above and beyond to assist others. They had hearts of gold, so it came naturally to them, even though they would leave this world very soon. On this fateful Sunday, July 22nd, the entire family attended church. After that, Bill went to the golf course with his buddies, Haley went to the beach with her friends, Jennifer went to the beach with Michaela, and they all had to go to the shop to collect supplies, so Michaela could make dinner that evening. They kind of split off after that, but they all knew that when it was time for supper, they would gather back together and watch TV before going to bed. That Sunday was just like any other. They finished their day's activities, had dinner, and went to bed at about 11 p.m. The following morning, July 23rd, around 10 a.m., a neighbor heard a knock at their door. The man outside was so badly battered that they failed to recognize him when they answered the door. They noticed that there were police cars in the vicinity, some of which were marked and others of which were not, and they quickly called the police. As they continued their workout, they came upon a burning structure. Additionally, there was a police car and an ordinary car with their front ends completely wrecked, giving the impression that they had been in an accident. This neighbor was unaware of the situation. The structure was located at 300 Sorghum Mill Drive, and the fire was not the only incident. Nevertheless, the neighbor knew that the Petit family was there and recognized that Bill Petit was the one outside his door. He had no idea if anyone else was inside the house. However, an hour before investigators arrived at the residence, a call was placed to them by a local bank teller. She stated that a woman named Jennifer Petit had visited the bank and asked for $15,000 to be deducted from her account. At that point, the teller was given a note stating that her husband and children were being held captive within their home.
My name is Mary Lyons. I'm the banking center manager. We have a lady who is in our bank right now who says that her husband and children are being held at their house.
What? Family hostage? By whom? That was a smart move. She was rather optimistic about it when she informed the teller that the men holding her family captive appeared kind and only wanted the money. However, the cashier could tell she was telling the truth because she had that look in her eye, the look of a mother to a child. The bank cashier hurried back to her office, shut down the lights, and dialed 911 right away, while Jennifer drove off with the money. To prevent the robbers from seeing them, investigators headed straight to the Petit family home and immediately set up a perimeter and unmarked cars. They also went up in person and hid behind the trees, and they were also looking into the possibility that Jennifer was complicit because she was acting so composed at the bank. Nevertheless, the investigators heard screams inside the house shortly after establishing their perimeter, but they did nothing because they were instructed not to, and instead chose to observe. The house caught fire not too long after this. Simultaneously, the SUV belonging to Petit emerged from the driveway and accelerated along the road. When they got into a collision with this SUV, which forced the car to halt, the officers who were pursuing them came out and detained the occupants. Sadly, there were just two odd men there, not Petit's family. Everyone inside had already died by the time the fire brigade arrived on the scene and put out the fire. Now they realized that there were probably family members inside. They discovered two victims before discovering a third. All of them were female. As they were being discovered, detectives hurried Bill to the hospital and removed the people they thought to be Jennifer, Haley, and Michaela. In the end, tents were erected in the rain to conduct additional research, and the three girls' bodies were brought in for autopsy. It was discovered that Jennifer had been strangled to death. She had died from asphyxiation as well as strangulation. But in the actual sense, smoke inhalation claimed the lives of Haley and Michaela. Unable to move, Michaela was discovered strapped to her bed. Both Michaela and Jennifer's bodies had been subjected to sexual assault. However, Haley was not sexually molested. Rather, she had managed to escape the situation in which she had been bound to her bed and had ascended the stairs before succumbing to the smoke. Jennifer's parents visited Bill when he was in the hospital. He started crying and expressed his regret for not being able to save everyone, to which they replied, "We're just glad you survived."
Tried to apologize to us for not saving our daughter and our grandchildren.
Bill was a complete mess, with 3-inch gaps in his brain due to the extent of his injuries, and it would take him a long time to heal. Even after being nearly killed by a blow to the head, he was determined to speak at the funeral of his wife and daughter 5 days later, and he succeeded in doing so. But he got up there and spoke about how he met his wife and his girls, and he wanted to express his gratitude to everyone for supporting him during these trying times and for simply being there.
Well, first of all, thank you for all coming out today to honor the memory of the girls. I really like to say thank you to people from all over the state of Connecticut and all over the country.
Even though he had survived, the investigations were not looking into him as a suspect because of the horrific injuries he had sustained. There was no way he could have caused those injuries on himself. However, they were curious about the sequence of events that transpired that evening and early morning, as well as how it might have happened and what he had seen. He now explained that the previous evening, after the family had eaten the dinner prepared by Michaela, they had settled down to watch TV in the living room when he dozed off in the chair, a habit shared by most fathers, and he discovered they were all asleep when he woke up. He chose to simply go back to sleep there because it was the middle of the night, and he didn't want to wake up Jennifer by going to bed. The next thing he knew was that he was being beaten over the head. Since he was bound by his wrists and ankles and was losing consciousness, he was unable to resist and could not stand. However, he didn't quite understand what they were talking about when he heard them tell Jennifer to grab her purse to go withdraw money from the bank, saying they would notice something odd if she didn't. However, he was carried to the basement and tied to the pole. A few minutes later, the house caught fire. That's when he actually escaped by struggling his way down the pole, climbing the basement steps, and out into the backyard. He had to roll out the yard when he arrived at the neighbor's front apartment to ask for assistance. Investigators were too preoccupied with apprehending the assassins of his family, who had just driven off, even though they were in the vicinity the whole time. Meanwhile, Jennifer and her sister had scheduled a beach vacation together just days before the event, so Jennifer's sister had attempted to contact her all morning, but there was no response. Nevertheless, another neighbor drove by early that morning at 4:30 a.m. and saw nothing unusual. Therefore, when they learned about the incident on the news, they felt terrible for not being conscious of their environment because it was thought to have happened at about 3 a.m. They also felt guilty for not being able to help out. After the murderers were apprehended, the detectives discovered it was 26-year-old Joshua Komisarjevsky and 44-year-old Stephen Haynes, who both had a long criminal history, so they were already familiar with the procedure. After being born to a 26-year-old woman who put him up for adoption, Joshua was taken in by the Komisarjevsky family, who started homeschooling him. He was doing well and was said to be very intelligent with a photographic memory. However, his sister said that he had molested her when he was 10 years old. At the age of 14, he committed his first burglary. Over the years, he was arrested for 18 separate house invasions. In 2002, he was put on trial for 12 burglary counts, which was 5 years before the murders. At this point, he admitted to his lawyers that he had broken into houses and occasionally slept in the owner's bedrooms, listening to their breathing, as he took pleasure in the sensation of breaking into someone's home and breaching their security.
For no apparent purpose. That was the frightening part of it. He robbed state troopers' houses.
He was able to recall every detail of his offenses, including what he did, and his lawyer informed the judge that he required close observation. In addition, he expressed regret and offered an apology for his misdeeds. However, the court was unable to determine whether he was a skilled manipulator or an honest and sensitive person. Ultimately, though, the judge declared that Joshua was a predator, a cold-blooded, calculating predator, and that he had a mental illness that required treatment. He was given a 9-year sentence with 6 years of special parole at this point. He was released from prison only 5 years into his sentence in April 2007, and the parole board was not even provided with his case file before granting him parole. Before being allowed back into society, he went to live at the Silliman halfway house. On the other hand, Stephen Hayes was raised in a fairly typical household. His siblings claimed that he was an extremely cunning person. Even though his parents were divorced, he did awful things even as a child, but he would always put the blame on his siblings, and because he was so good, everyone would believe him. He even put a gun to his brother's head when they were older. When he was 16 years old, he was found guilty as an adult and sentenced to 2 years in prison. However, the majority of the offense was robbery. Meanwhile, he was a former crack addict in recovery, and his daughter Alice claimed that she didn't get to see her father, but they would frequently communicate through letters while he was in prison. Now, Joshua was already living at the Silliman house when Stephen relocated to that same area.
Every day I wake up wondering if today will be the day that my name is called.
4 months after Petit's murder, a gag order was placed to prevent the attorneys, police, and witnesses from speaking to the media. The entire neighborhood installed alarm systems and created makeshift safe rooms in their homes as a result of their extreme fear. This incident took place in someone's house, which was meant to be the safest location for security. However, a lot of people, including the Petit family, started criticizing the police for not doing their job well enough. People felt there was something they could have done to keep the girls safe. Before that house caught fire, they were sitting there for 30 minutes without taking any action. Investigators, however, said that they did as instructed and trained, even though they knew things could get worse if they marched in. They didn't take action because they were afraid the killers, who were merely robbers at this point, would turn violent if they had seen the police. Following these killings, the governor mandated electronic surveillance of burglars on parole, prohibited the release of violent felons from parole, and demanded a review of formerly incarcerated individuals. A year later, there were large signs that read, "Hope," and candles were placed in front of every house. After the Petit family home was destroyed in 2008 and replaced with a memorial garden for the girls, Bill struggled to fall asleep for several months, as he had been asleep at the time of the incident. On several occasions, while in detention, Stephen was sad. and was reported to have tried to commit suicide. He stated that he didn't think anyone would be harmed and that he merely thought they were breaking into this family's house to rob them. He stated that they intended to remove them and secure them in the vehicle and then set fire to the house to destroy any evidence, but nobody would get hurt. On the other hand, Joshua's family reportedly rejected him right away, saying that they knew of this and thought he was a monster after detectives went to them and told them that Joshua was being investigated for a home invasion, which was a homicide. Joshua said that this was just a terrible home invasion, saying that he saw the Petit family and thought it would be nice to live there someday. However, Joshua's parents ultimately had to post a note on the home expressing their deepest sympathy for the family and their inability to understand why something like this occurred. Now, before Stephen and Joshua's evil deeds at the time of the murders, they gave the impression of being law-abiding people as long as you ignored their lengthy criminal past. However, the truth was that they were planning their next crime behind their happy families and smiles. Following all of the admissions about how they physically attacked Jennifer and strangled her, Stephen poured gasoline all over her corpse in the house before striking a match. Both men accepted a plea deal that spared them death in exchange for life in prison without the chance of parole. The prosecution, however, declared that they would pursue the death penalty to the end. In 2010, 3 years after the killings, Stephen was put on trial for 7 counts of sexual assault, murder, and kidnapping. Stephen was placed in a secure cell and made to wear Ferguson clothing that is essentially quite strong, so that he couldn't prepare himself for suicide because he was under suicide watch. Instead of merely being executed, his attorney attempted to convince the judge that his life would be worse because he would be tormented daily. Stephen received a death sentence after being found guilty on 16 of the 17 counts. He remarked, "I hope death will bring peace and comfort to those whom I've hurt so much. For me, death would be a welcome respite." Joshua's trial took place in 2011, and during that time, he was found guilty on all 17 counts and given the death penalty. Nevertheless, in 2015, Connecticut abolished the death penalty, resulting in the reduction of both death sentences to life terms. For security and safety reasons, these two were housed in different prisons. With such a hideous crime as killing a full family, I feel an instant death penalty should be given to the murderers. But what do you think about this case? Is the punishment well-deserving? Let us know in the comment section below. Now, have you heard of a case that has remained unsolved for more than 35 years? Check that out in our previous video, the unsolved case of Chandra May in 1986 in Scott County, Mississippi.